you have joined in with us. This is going to be an awesome broadcast today. You're going to want to make sure you share this broadcast with your family and friends because we're going to be talking about a very important subject today. And I have some special guests with us today, as you can see here with us. And we're going to introduce them and let them tell a little bit about themselves and what they do and why we are on so early in the morning today. But it's a blessed day, October 13th, 2022. Man, we're almost halfway through the month of October, and we got a great broadcast for you today. So let your family and friends know that they can hear this either live or on the replay. We welcome you. If you have questions, go ahead and write them in the chat as we speak about this important topic that we're going to speak about. I'm not going to say it yet, and I'm going to allow them to talk about it as they introduce themselves, and then we're going to get right into the broadcast. As you see these three women here, and you probably wondering, who are they? Some of you might know them, some of you might not know them, but they are making their live debut today together as the team. So we're going to start off with, I'm going to introduce Lynette Mercado, and she's going to introduce herself, tell a little bit about herself, and then she's going to introduce the other two lovely ladies we have on screen with us.
Good morning, everyone. As Pastor Rob said, I'm Lynette Mercado, and if you're in Chicago, you're in my hometown. Some of you may have known me as Lynette Santiago. I served in the city of Chicago for several years, over a decade as a pastor. And my background was in the faith-based community, but my faith led me to work at a nonprofit called National Youth Advocate Program. And today we're here to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. My title is Chief Immigrant and Refugee Officer. And so we work with unaccompanied minors, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But, you know, with every great project and every great vision, you have to be accompanied by a team. And I couldn't be prouder to be sitting here today with the two women that are on your screen. I'm going to introduce them. When I first joined NYAP, that's the acronym for National Youth Advocate Program, I looked around and there weren't many Latinas. And so I connected immediately with a colleague of mine that has become a sister to me in this journey. And her name is Candelaria Mota, and I'm going to hand it off to you so you could introduce yourself.
Thank you, Lynette. Good morning, everybody. My name is Candelaria Mota, also known as Candy, and I help to serve as the National Recruitment Director for NYAP. I've had the great honor of serving for the last 10 years at NYAP, which is the most solid nonprofit organization spread throughout the country that does incredible work. And we pride ourselves really on caring for people, connecting communities, and promoting peace. And we are honored to be able to have this platform today with Pastor Rob. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Candy. And last but not least, when I was a teenager, she was only 5 years older than me, but she was my youth pastor. And when we started doing this work in Chicago and in Indiana, I couldn't think of a better person to join us to recruit foster parents. And she was a little hesitant because we are bilingual, but foster care is sort of another language that we all speak. And so I want to introduce Nelly Caravallo, who I love near and dear and who has known me for a very long time. So Nelly, here you go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again, Pastor Robert, for this amazing platform. And yes, my name is Nelly Caravallo, and I am the Senior Foster Parent Growth and Retention Manager here for NYAP. I've been here for 3 years, and we serve the unaccompanied minors here, not just Chicago, but I also do recruiting of foster parents in Northwest Indiana. And it's been an incredible journey. It's been an incredible privilege and a blessing to be able to be a part of this great team.
Thank you, Nelly. So I'm going to start speaking about what we do, and I'm going to ask Pastor Robert to interrupt me every time I say something that is sort of, it's the third language I speak that a lot of people don't speak. And that way it's sort of, we have a dialogue, right? So I don't know how many of you have seen years ago, since 2012, I've been watching unaccompanied kids cross the border. You would see the images, and I, in my previous life as a pastor, was very involved in immigration activism in the city of Chicago. Pastor Robert was a part of that, as was Nelly. Just really, thinking about ways to engage, to do civic engagement to ensure that there were just practices towards immigrants. And in 2019, I was given the opportunity to work with an amazing team to respond to an RFP, a request for proposal that the Office of Refugee and Resettlement had sort of released to do foster care for the kids at the border. A lot of times people see the images and they wonder what happens with them. There's this phrase, kids in cages. You see the kids, the images of the kids and these, with aluminum blankets, and the kids that come to us, they call it la hielera, which is the ice box, because it's so cold when they get there. And so when you see those images, a lot of times our heartstrings are tugged and we wonder what we can do. And thankfully, we've been given the privilege to be able to do something to make a difference. Just to let the audience know, a lot of these kids come from the Northern Triangle, which is what it's called, but it's Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And they're fleeing violence, they're fleeing poverty. They're, sometimes they call them environmental refugees because of what's happening in those countries. And some might be separated at the border. We don't know the story until they get to us. So what happens is a lot of times the families are in Mexico and the parents know they will be apprehended, and they tell the kids to just go to an agent, because there is what's called the Flores Settlement Agreement, which is a legal precedent that gives these children the right to be able to be housed in a humane way and reunited with what is called a sponsor in this country. A sponsor is not someone like World Vision or Compassion International, where you send money and you sponsor a child in another country. The way that the Office of Refugee and Resettlement terms a sponsor is 4 different categories. And the sponsor level 1 is a mother, father. Sponsor level 2 is a grandfather, a cousin. Sponsor level 3 could be an uncle, and sponsor level 4 could be someone who knew the child. But there's an entire process that goes along with that. So once the child reaches the border and connects with either a Custom Border Patrol or an ICE agent, they have 72 hours to release them to the Office of Refugee and Resettlement. And then the Office of Refugee and Resettlement finds a placement for the minors. We do not do shelters. There are shelters where the kids are in congregate settings, and a congregate setting is a place where basically, you saw the convention centers where the children were. It's an influx center because there were so many kids. And in 2021 alone, 121,000 kids crossed the border. So it was just, it's a lot it's high traffic, right? And the federal government tries to do their best to provide placements, but there weren't enough foster homes. We only do foster care at NYAP, and we currently have 15 offices. We have 5 offices in Illinois. We have 2 offices in Indiana. We have 2 offices in South Carolina, 2 offices in Georgia. We have an office in Arizona, in Nevada, in Louisiana, and in Ohio. So we do have 15 offices, but one of the things that we are always in need of is foster homes, because the best place for a child to grow, to thrive, and to sort of receive the loving care that they need is in a foster home. And I'm going to hand it off to either Nelly or Candy to talk about why it is we need foster homes and why it is we place the children in them.
Before we hand it off to to Nelly here, Lynette. You said a couple key things I want to see and try to get some clarification. For those of you watching, if you have any questions and you want some clarifications, feel free to ask them. So what you're saying is the children that are crossing the border, are they coming to the border by themselves, or they're coming with their parents, and then their parents are just sending them over?
Most of them are by themselves. So either coyotes are bringing them. If they cross with their family, they are not separated once they're on the U.S. soil. The separation happens in Mexico. Now, some of them are basically rescued from trafficking. They're trafficking victims. And in Florida alone, our team identified 40 that had been trafficked. So there's the human trafficking for either sex or labor. And so there's all, we don't know how they arrive to us until our professionals, our case managers and clinicians begin to do the assessments. But there are a wide array of ways that they arrive to us. I mean, I've read some of the assessments where they just get on a bus, their parents or their grandmother or somebody who was raising them basically puts them on a bus, and they go from country to country with a phone number of a relative in this country that they are supposed to reunify with. And I've seen them, I've met the minors, I've been able to talk to them, but actually Nelly has been there when they arrive, and Nelly has worked closely with the foster parents, as has Candy. And the way they arrive to us, we can't control, but what we do control is the service that we provide and the experience that we give them at our program, which we have called La Jornada.
Wow. And two other questions we can have here is, when you're saying they're trafficking, sex trafficking these children, is that from their origin spots they're coming from, or once they come to the United States, there are sex traffickers grabbing them and taking them from that point?
No, if they're captured, like if they're brought through the border with the trafficker is captured at the border, right? It's determined there. But once so we don't get foster kids that are in U.S. soil, that have been in the U.S. and have been trafficked. Those usually go into domestic foster care. I mean, the federal government and local governments, there is a big initiative about trafficking because it's sad. And so many kids and adults and women and men. It's I think it's a subject for another day. But some of the kids are being brought to be trafficked in this country. And thankfully, they are rescued at the border.
Wow. We definitely need to be praying about that. And what about the ages of these children? What are like the average ages of these children that are crossing?
NYAP, La Jornada, primarily serves tender age kids, which are 0 to 13. But we can serve 0 to 17. So our primary, we license foster homes to work with all ages. We have, I would say that the different categories are 0 to 13 tender age, sibling groups. So a lot of times it's 2, 3 siblings. One might be a teen, 2 might be younger, and parenting teens. Sometimes young women arrive at the border with their babies. And so those are the primary 3 categories. And at times we do get pregnant teens as well. So those are the 4 categories that we serve. But what we have seen that the federal government sends to us are primarily kids 0 to 13 or sibling groups with teens.
Wow, that is eye-opening. So those of you who are watching right now, whether you're watching live or on the replay, we're going to be going into some more information and how you can help out in these areas. Maybe some of you are already feeling the desire to help. And by the time we're done, we're going to give you the ability and the opportunity to find out what you can actually do as these ladies share their hearts and what they're doing. And so thank you guys for joining in. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and I will ask them the questions so that you can have them answered. And so now let's head up with Nelly, and as Nelly shares a little bit about what she does.
Thank you, Pastor Robert. So yes, that was a lot, Lynette, and every time I hear it, it just it's overwhelming. But I just think Lynette mentioned that we were in certain states, and I think that we have the incredible privilege for those of us that do live in the state of Illinois. We have 5 locations, and in the city and Northwest Indiana, we have the incredible privilege to be able to help these children. The question always is posed to us, how do we help them? And so I am one of the recruiters in Chicago and Illinois and in Indiana. And so what I do is I recruit foster families. And so what we do is we have 2 different foster care programs. We have the transitional foster care families, which I'll talk about. And then we also have the long-term foster care families. I focus a lot on the transitional foster care family here in Chicago and Northwest Indiana. And so there are some requirements for our interested families or potential foster families. In order to become a foster family, there are some requirements that is required in each state, whether it's Indiana or Chicago, and we abide by those. And so I'm just going to go through a list of the requirements that are needed for families that are interested in becoming foster families. When we say transitional foster care families, it's because the children that we serve will come to us on a temporary basis. And so if you are a transitional foster family, these kids will be with us an average of 30, 35 days. We have been able to turn around and reunify the children with their sponsored families, as Lynette mentioned, in 25 days. But they can be with us more than that, and a maximum of 120 days. So if you are a transitional foster care parent for these children, it's temporary, 30, 35 days, more or less, the maximum being 120 days. The question is then what happens beyond 120 days if for whatever reason they're not able to be reunified? Then these children would go into long-term foster care, which in La Jornada as well with NYAP. We have 2 locations in Illinois that the kids can do the long-term foster care. But some of the requirements in both states, I will highlight the difference between the states, but some of the requirements, you have to be over the age of 21. In the state of Illinois, you must be a U.S. citizen, a resident, or have an ITIN number. A lot of families come to me and they want to help and they want to do so much for these children. And the fear for them is always, we don't have our ITIN number. We're not a resident. But in the state of Illinois, you would just need to be a resident, a U.S. citizen, or have that ITIN number. And then we do background checks, medical clearance. We have 3 unrelated references, 1 related. I do parent orientations every single Wednesday via Zoom at 6 p.m. So I just want to put that out there. If anybody was interested, we can get you that information. And in the parent orientation, we give detailed information as to what are the requirements, what is going to be needed. We do have licensing coordinators that literally will walk with you through the entire process. And we do have to also do the required state trainings for DCFS in the state of Illinois and DCS in Indiana. So there are trainings that are required in order for you to become a licensed foster family. That's another thing. You have to be licensed in the state of Illinois and Indiana to become a foster family. And so we help walk you through this entire process. It's a lot of information, but like I said, I do have parent orientations every single Wednesday at 6 p.m. via Zoom. For anybody that is interested, I would love to plug you into these orientations where I can give you more details as to what is required for you to be able to help these children to become a transitional foster family.
Awesome, Nelly. So, a couple questions that I have here. So, what you're asking right now, and what is the need that someone could step in and say, "Hey, I want to do something about this," is that you're looking for foster parents on a temporary basis
That's right.
for up to how many days now?
The
Or
kids, the maximum is 120 days in the transitional foster care. But between 35 days, we're able to, get the kids processed and reunify successfully with an appropriate sponsor, usually here in the States. Um, and so, yeah, it's between 35 days, no more than 120 days.
I would add to that, like we have had some cases that stay more than 120 days if they don't have anyone in this country. We are ramping up to get our long-term foster care program going, and we should be open beginning of November. And so those children who don't have a viable sponsor, and basically what happens is either their parents have passed away due to violence, or their parents have trafficked them, and we've tried to find family in the country and there is no one here. If there isn't a viable sponsor, then they go into long-term foster care. So they could be with us longer than that. But at NYAP, our average length of stay is 24 days right now. So within 24 days, we're able to do all the requirements, the medical assessments, the educational assessments, they get legal representation. All of those things happen in the course of 24 days so that when they are reunified with their families, they have what they need to integrate and go to school and continue their journey in this country.
Awesome. I got some more questions, but we got a viewer question here that says, how many children are being placed in a transitional foster parent / home?
Go ahead. Oh. And so how many kids are placed in the transitional foster care? That would depend on the families. The homes that our potential families live in, how many beds you have for the kids. It's basically based on how much space you have in your home. Let's say you want to help 2 children, then you would have to have a room with 2 beds in it or 2 individual rooms. There are licensing requirements in reference to the beds, but to answer that question, it would basically depend on every family and how much room you have in your home to receive these children.
Awesome. Here's another question that just came in from Cecilia. It says, so do they go to school, or what happens to the children probably throughout the day? What do they do from morning to night? And if the parents are working, how does all that work?
That is an amazing question, and I'm glad she asked. So when we do transitional foster care, we together at La Jornada, we provide incredible resources. Lynette tapped on it a little bit. So we do have an education center where the kids ages, if they're potty trained, usually ages 3 to 4, all the way up through 17. They're getting education at our center. So we have teachers that will help them. We have the education department. They will have a clinician assigned to them. And so if they need any therapy or counseling, they get individual and group counseling at our education center. They will also be provided a case manager that will help them through the entire process. We have medical coordinators that will work with the families to provide medical for the children. And so all of this is based out of our centers that we have. And so, yeah, they would go to school with us. Now, if they're under the age of 3 and they're not potty trained, obviously these children would have to stay home with their foster families. But we do provide, the kids are able to go to our center in transitional foster care and receive all the services that we provide for them.
And what we do is we're open from 7 to 6 to facilitate those working parents, because obviously, and the reason they're not enrolled in public schools is because they're not with us long enough, number one. Number two is they've experienced a lot of trauma, and it takes time to stabilize them. Number three, COVID is still a real thing, and if they have COVID, they have to quarantine. And so it's just there's so many things that happen in a timeline. Within the first 5 days, a lot of work has to happen in order to ensure that we're able to stabilize the children. We don't have schools, but we do provide educational services. So they do get like ESL classes, they get subject matters that sort of will give them an introduction as to what they will experience when they go to public school. One of the things that we do, and we're probably one of the only programs in the country that does this, we give them a MAP test, the MAP measure of academic progress. Most schools use that in Chicago, and not in Ohio, they do as well. And MAP is bilingual, and it's auditory for younger kids. So that way, although we're not a school, we're able to create sort of the pathway, because a lot of these children will be eligible for IEPs or 504s. And we believe at NYAP that, first of all, children are first. We believe in advocacy. We believe in empowering our staff to help our children, everyone that comes into our care. So we do our best so that when they go to their parents, and I would say that 58% of our kids have reunified with their mothers, and we do have that data. So most of them are going back to a parent that has been here in the country, that probably came to work and then paid a coyote to bring their child. So what happens is when they go, they have a therapeutic file, they have an educational file, they have a legal file, and then we follow up to make sure that if the birth parents or whoever the sponsor is unable to connect with resources in the communities they call home, we try to support them to ensure that they're able to engage services where they're at.
Awesome. Couple of questions as well in regards to the educational center. So I'm a parent. I'm fostering a child, and I heard that the center is open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do they get to the center, and how do they get home?
So that's a foster parent. So it's a foster parent responsibility, and the hours could vary. Like sometimes it's 7:30 or 8, but we do meet the needs of the foster parents. So we have staffing available that could do 7 to 6. Foster parents receive a per diem. So the per diem is payment when they have a child placed in their home. I'm not going to say how much that is right here, but the per diem is also tax-free. So foster parents do get some funding to be able to add a family member to their home for those 24 or 30 days. And so the expectation is that foster parents can drive the children to the center and pick them up. And our centers are placed in, and we are in Chicago, in the Humboldt Park community. We are also in Cicero. We are in East Dundee. We are in Naperville. We're in Gurnee. We're in East Chicago. So these are general areas, and we don't broadcast where the centers are at. But in these communities, we have these centers where then the children can come, and everything is set up for them to receive the services that they need. But the foster parents transport them.
Okay. Now, what if I have a heart to do this, but I don't speak any Spanish? Are these mostly children that speak Spanish?
Most of them are, but and Candy and Nelly, you guys could speak to this.
Sure. Well, actually, Nelly, you know directly because she has worked, obviously, because of East Chicago, Indiana, we have had many foster parents that only speak English. And quite frankly, the connection still happens. It is our hope that ideally our foster parents are bilingual, that they can meaningfully speak the language and connect in a real way with the child. But yet the language barrier doesn't keep the connection from taking place. I think it's also worth noting and really, really driving home the impact and the role and quite frankly, the privilege of being a foster parent. First of all, this program is so unique in that you're getting a ton of support. Not only is the child able to go in one building, receive the educational, receive the recreational, and the clinical, the therapeutic services in one site, but then you're able to feed that child and nurture that child. I always say that the great thing about being a foster parent is that you are able to really be the walking, talking healer for that child. So those of you, all of you in this platform are based on faith, right? We believe in a God. And this is what makes this program so beautiful, that it's embedded in, with this notion of helping children elevate, heal, recover from their trauma, recover from their pain. And that's what makes this program, I think, so terrific. And really, that's why we're so happy to be here. We would encourage you to really think about becoming a foster parent, because it is a life-changing move. You will never be the same. I have been in child welfare, personally speaking, for 18 years, and I have yet to ever meet a foster parent that regrets being a foster parent. It is life-changing. You will only elevate your life, your family, your children are going to be like, Mom, we love this. The children that we help to serve are also so beautiful, so special. And on average, 336 children cross the border every day. Imagine being able to reverse that data. Imagine being able to heal those children, and imagine being able to leave a legacy that reshapes the next generation.
And I would add to that we began serving kids on November of 2020, and we have served 1,800 kids, and we have reunified 1,750. So it's not like they stay with us forever. And so during that time, and this is just with 276 beds. So with 276 beds, that's how many kids we have served in 2 years now, Thanksgiving of November. But not only that, I would say that, we have licensed about, I think it's 300 homes. How many homes is it, Candy?
Technically, right now we're at, I think, 122.
122 homes, but 336 beds.
Correct.
And so what we have seen as you talk to foster parents, I've seen them cry. The kids leave them love letters. Just to see the foster parents' lives transform. Like, they talk about how serving these minors has changed their life, because I will say, some do have behavioral issues, some do have trauma, but really they're grateful. They're so grateful. And Nelly, I'd love for you to talk about, because you've been at intake. I've never been at an intake, so I've never seen how it works, because I'm here in Ohio working from home, but you've seen this in action. Why don't you talk about when the kids arrive at our centers?
100%. And so, to add to the language barrier, and then I'm going to jump into that, Lynette, we would prefer, obviously, that at least one person in the home would speak Spanish. But, Pastor Robert, love is the universal language. These kids come into the homes, and whether you speak their language or not, these kids with our foster families, they know immediately that they are safe. They know immediately with our foster families, and what I've seen and what we've experienced, that they are loved, that they are cared for. And Candy mentioned, we do have some families that I have recruited that speak absolutely no English. And, we thought that would be a problem, but the opposite has happened. The kids love them. The families love them. The families, they use Google Translate, and it makes for a great time in their home. They're constantly laughing at the parents' Spanish and vice versa, their English. And it just makes for a great relationship with these kids. But that language is always going to be a barrier if you don't speak it. But again, love is the universal language. The kids will know that they're safe with you. And with modern technology, you can make that happen. But to talk about the intake process, so for a year, we actually started in 2019. So that first year, it was just hiring staff. It was recruiting families. It was, finding buildings to be centers. And so for a whole year, I felt like we were just, in the pregnancy process, right? You're nurturing this baby, and you have to go to the doctors, and there's just so much before the child is born. When November 2020 hit, and we had in Indiana, Northwest Indiana, We had foster families in place. We were in a position, we were staffed, we had a building to receive kids. I can't begin to tell you how excited I was. This is a true story. I was like, if your child is ready to be born and everybody's in the hospital and they tell you they're in labor, the baby's coming. That's exactly what happened. So I was at the center when our first two children ever in the history of Northwest Indiana, when they came to the center, we were so excited. And I will tell you, it was a sibling group. It was a brother and a sister. I'll never forget it. And the brother, although he was young himself, he was probably 9 years old. His sister probably 6. He was like the caretaker. He was the father. He was protecting his sister. You saw that he took on this responsibility of, you can't touch my sister. They were scared. They didn't know us. They had just been traveling. And it was late when they arrived to the center. Our foster family was there. Our stay at intake staff was there. And I noticed, and it was in the winter. So the little girl was standing off to the side, and she was literally shaking from the crown of her head to the bottom of her feet, like literally shaking. And in my excitement and in my ignorance, I thought she was cold. I thought they've never been in winter. They've never experienced snow. They're coming from, Guatemala, a country that, it's hot. So I thought she was cold. So I reached out to her and basically offered, assistance to see if she was warm. And her tears just started flowing. And she said, "I'm not cold." She said, "I'm scared." But she was literally trembling. My heart broke. This is a true story. So she was so scared. She didn't know us. So immediately I went into mom mode. I introduced her to everybody. I assured her that she was safe. I introduced her to her foster family who were there. And we explained to her how this was going to work and that these beautiful people were going to take care of her. I will tell you, Pastor Robert, Candy, Lynette, I went to visit that little girl probably 2 days later because I was so impacted by her trembling. So I was like, I need to follow up. I need to go visit her. So I went probably 2 days later, the most 3, just to see how she was doing, how was the foster family doing. She was a totally different little girl. She was not the little girl that was trembling in the center. She was so happy. She gave me a tour of her bedroom and said that this is her bed and these were her clothes. And oh my Lord, she introduced me to her foster doggies. She was a different little girl, different. So how these kids come to us versus how they leave in such a short time, it's priceless. I mean, they leave more secure. They leave more confident. They leave knowing that they can do anything and that their dreams can be accomplished. And I'm going to end with this story. And I just shared this with our staff, recruiters, and licensing coordinators this week. We had a child, a young boy that was placed in one of the homes with a foster dad. That's another thing. You don't have to be married. A lot of people think to be a foster family, you have to be married. So we had a single foster dad. He had this child. When the child left, he left a letter on his bed. And, I always say the hardest part of this program is saying goodbye to the kids because, you fall in love with them in such a short time. But he left a letter, and in the letter, he basically just thanked the foster dad and said, "Thank you for teaching me how to go to bed early, how to eat right." The foster dad in such a short time impacted this young man so much. But he ended the letter with this. He said, "And I will remember you when I make it to the NBA, and I'll send you free tickets." When the foster dad sent me that letter, I immediately sent it to you, Lynette and Candace. Because
that's what it's about.
For me, I called that foster dad when he said, "Ellie, look at this letter that, the young man left me." I picked up the phone, I called him, and I said, "You did that. You did that. You instilled in this young man." He said, "When I make it to the NBA, not if I make it, and I said, you instilled that. You gave him, you gave him the power to believe that he could make it to the NBA. And I told him, when he makes it, make sure I get a free ticket. And the foster dad was like, oh, here we go. Because the beauty about this program is that the kids get to, with the parents' permission or their spouse's permission, they get to have a relationship with their foster families beyond leaving their home. And so our foster families do keep in contact with them. They do let them know how they're doing in school. We have so many stories of kids sending them pictures of, this is my new book bag for my new school. We get them all. We get so many stories, too many to share in this short time. But to piggyback off what Candy said, the impact that you make is priceless. We know that it's a sacrifice for you to open your homes and your hearts and to go through the entire licensing process. We understand that it's work, but we also understand that this is priceless, and the life that you change, lives that you can change. It's just, there's just no words.
And I would add to that we have a lot of DACA students that work for us, DACA recipients, and they have cried with me. They're either youth workers, case aides, case managers, and so they inspire the kids. They tell the kids. I mean, I've met there's a young man in Chicago who tried to cross the border 3 times when he was a kid and finally made it. And, when I met him, he was a case aide and he was going to college. And I'm so grateful that in the state of Illinois, there's opportunity for DACA kids. There are scholarships. And so he finally got his bachelor's degree. He told me, I want to be a case manager because I want to be able to tell the kids that they can be me. And so for the kids to be engaged with day-to-day direct care workers who walk the journey with them, not with them, but walk the same journey they did, that can connect and say, hey, you came to this country, but you have to go to school and you have to do this, and just inspire them. And I've sat with the kids at the centers and I've heard them say, yo quiero ser como Maria, yo quiero ser como, I mean, they'll talk to you and they'll tell you what they dream of. And in the education program, they have science projects. They've gone to the Mexican American Museum in Chicago. They get to go out and they'll tell me, they're like, I'm going to be a scientist. There was one girl that told me she was going to be, she was going to go and she was going to be with, I think it's K-pop or something, some Korean dance group. And she was showing me her moves, and it's like they write thank you letters when you go there. And they're so, I mean, they've done plays for us. It's just amazing. And for me to be able to be part of their journey of La Jornada, it's just powerful. We don't know what their future holds, but we can be a part of their story. And that is why we are here today, because we need foster parents, and we need foster parents who have a heart for it. It's scary. There's a lot you don't know, but there's so much training, and there's staff that walks alongside you every step of the way.
Yeah.
Amen.
And Cecilia,
hold on, Nelly.
Okay,
Let me jump right in there.
Go ahead.
We have a question here, but it's also probably a question on the parent side. She writes in, is it hard, though, to make that separation when they leave the foster home and go back to their parents? Now, do you guys provide services? Because like you're talking about all this attachment for the parent once it's time for the child to leave. How does that work? And some parents can get really attached. How do you deal with on the parent side and the emotional, especially women, and they're more emotional than sometimes us guys, but us guys can be emotional too. So I know it's tough. So for the child, but also on the parent side, is there any services that are provided for the parent to help with that separation once it's time to go?
Yeah, it's like I said, the hardest part of the program when you're a foster parent is saying goodbye to the kids. That is the hardest part of fostering. But I will tell you that the offset of knowing that you impacted the lives of these children, You see how happy they are. There is a sense of gratification for our transitional foster families, that they get to know that the kids get reunified with their families.
Yes.
There is a sense of gratification to know that you played a part to house them in. I always say this. I always say our families are literally an answer to some mom's prayer. You are an answer to some grandmother's prayer. I think about my own children and the thought of my child being lost somewhere and someone taking my child in to protect them until I got to them. It's invaluable. The families are so grateful. Another thing to answer her question is that you do get to keep a relationship with these children, again, with the sponsor's permission. You can keep a relationship with the kids, and so you're able to see how their life looks beyond them leaving your house. And so I believe that, again, with the sponsor's permission, you can have a lifelong relationship with these children. And
Absolutely.
one of my foster families, this same question was posed in one of my trainings that I had. And one of my foster families said, "Oh no, I'm coming into this understanding and working in my mind that these kids, they're only here temporary. They're not going to be here forever." So you almost, in our trainings, we prepare you that way and we constantly remind you to remember that these kids are here, for a short time. And it would be like if your relative came to visit you, for the holiday. It's always exciting when they come, and it's always sad when my cousins leave back to Florida. But I understand that, that has to happen. And so, is it difficult? Yes. But does the benefits outweigh? Yes, in my opinion.
Yes. And, I really wanted to piggyback on that. I think it's really important to say, so thank you, Cecilia, for that question, because it's a really important one. And I think it's the one thing that it scares people to move forward with it. And what I would encourage you to really walk away with is this notion that the reality, to Nelly's point, your heart essentially breaks so that theirs can heal, right?
That's
So
right.
even though yes, it would be a loss. The connection, the continuity of care, the healing opportunity that you gave them is going to stay with them forever, right? And you helped to restore, like what Lynette was saying earlier, being able to get them to do what it is that they enjoy doing. You're restoring their childhood. You're able to give them back their childhood and to help to heal that level of trauma that they've sustained. Another point is that obviously there's always an influx of new children that are coming. So you get the opportunity to heal others as they come. So yes, the support that you receive, the training that we give walks you through the realistic grief stages and how to navigate those stages in an effective, productive way.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I'm seeing Bobby's message here. Bobby, I am really sorry about the child being removed from the mother. We do not do domestic foster care, so this is with DCFS, and that is not what this program is. This program is solely with the kids from the border. The state of Illinois finds the foster home. NYAP cannot intervene with this. So I'm really sorry. And I want to acknowledge what you just wrote, Bobby and Joey. And I offline, I don't know what the situation is. NYAP does provide domestic foster care, but they provide domestic foster care for teenagers. So this would be a domestic program, a domestic child in care with DCFS. I would suggest connecting with the DCFS case manager who can help navigate this process.
Amen. And we got some other questions and some statements here. And I think this is good. Joel says, my friend has had children and he's going to take this week and pray for them. And so maybe real quickly can talk about, because I got some other questions here and I still have some questions in my mind. I know our our time is slipping away. I don't know how much time we have with you guys, but as a church, and those who are faith-based, and we see here Joe said he's going to be praying for these children, and his friend has taken a child. What can a church do to help out, so that you guys can either find foster parents in the churches, have a special prayer time, when the prayer teams can pray, what are some needs that could be praying for, that kind of thing. So as a church, I know there's a million things that we can do, but what do you think, who could take maybe the top 3 things as a church? If we're watching, pastors are watching or be watching on the replay, what would be the top 3 things you would say as a church we can do to help out La Jornada and these children that are suffering and that are here in Chicago, that are in need of just the love of someone, showing the love of Christ?
So I'll take that. The first thing I would say is if it aligns with the church's mission, vision, and values, and if this is something that you say, you know what, this is a mission at our doorstep, allow our team to go and sort of have a conversation, whether it is a leaders meeting or this is not for everyone. But if you would want to partner with us, give us the opportunity, because it's, we find that connecting with churches that this aligns with their mission, vision, and values is just, it's amazing. The second thing that I would say is if foster parents within your church decide to partner with us, support them, be there for them, embrace them. And Nelly, I'll let you do the third one. I'm out of it.
Yeah. So because I am the recruiter, what would be helpful from the churches is that you would allow us either to come in, to present our program to your congregations, or we can do something virtual via Zoom. I'm always open to meet with the clergy of the different churches to present the program and basically just help us to recruit foster families, spread the word. And again, I'm willing to come in to do presentations, stand in your lobby with a banner with
Yes.
forms that you can sign, just basically opening your doors and your hearts to us, to be able to come in and to present the program to your congregants.
So if they wanted to get a hold of you, Nelly, I'm a pastor, I want to get a hold of you to come to my church and present the program, maybe preach even, amen.
Oh,
How would I get a hold of you?
you can get a hold of me at my via email. Can I put that on here?
Or the La Jornada at NYAP along with the number.
That's
Okay.
right. You can do that.
Give me the number and I'll
What's
post
the
it.
1-800 number?
855 Jornada.
Yeah, it's 855 Jornada.
855
Jornada. Jornada.
Make sure you let them know that if anybody calls, that they are in the Chicago or Northwest Indiana area, because we are in other states.
So if someone calls 855 Jornada, what do they do from there?
They basically let people know that they're interested in connecting to be a foster parent in Chicago, and that information is immediately, they'll ask for name, phone number, and it'll immediately go to Nelly. The other thing they can do is also email lajornada@nyap.org. So, if calling is not convenient, you could send a quick email to lajornada@nyap.org. Yes, and that will be routed to us as well. Just make sure you say it's for the Chicago program. And if you're in East Chicago, you could say where you're at, and we'll figure out who you should go to.
And I just wanted to clarify, it's East Chicago, Indiana, because there's the east side of Chicago as well, Illinois, but it's East Chicago, Indiana.
So if I'm a pastor in Indiana or Illinois, I can call 855 Jornada and ask for Nelly and have her come to my church to do a presentation.
That's right.
Or if I don't want to talk to anybody and just send an email, I can go to La Jornada at NYAP.org and ask for Nelly so she can come in and do a presentation at my church. So as a pastor, that's what we can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Okay. Now we got a whole bunch of other questions that we can try to get to. Here's another one that kind of goes along with the parent side, but what happens with the kids' sides when the kids get attached to their foster brother or sister temporarily there, and now they're leaving? What kind of services do the children have? You know, because maybe that's kind of devastating. You know, I got this sister, you know, or adopted sister, foster brother come in.
Mhm.
I didn't know them. Now we're friends and we're playing together. We're playing video games and we're playing, you know, dolls or whatever. Now she has to leave.
For
and
sure.
She was my friend. How do you deal with the children aspect of it?
Yeah, and so it's basically the same thing. I know that when I do training with my foster families here, I do a pre-placement, post-placement, and in-placement. And so what I like to tell my families is prepare your children or youth before the kids ever get there. In other words, let them know you're gonna have a foster brother or sister, and explain to them before the children ever arrive that this is temporary, that you're helping them, that they have a mom or a dad or a grandpa and they want to go home. And so a lot of that is, we discuss that in the trainings. And another thing is, we do have, once our foster families are with us and licensed and have kid in care, we have monthly meetings with our foster families and our staff. And it's kind of like a support group. It's kind of like in that meeting, you know, we just kind of, you know, we want to know, how's it going for you? Do you have any other questions? Other foster families that are seasoned will help our newer families. And so I think it's just a matter of the parents having that dialogue with the children or the youth and explaining to them, you know, pre-placement, you know, what's going to happen. These kids are coming. Not only that, but I think you should, you know, before the kids ever come, you're preparing not just your children, but your extended family when they come to the home. And they're like, oh, who's this little guy? You know, that you're letting the grandparents know, the cousins, the other family members, what it is that you're going to do, that they may support you. And then also understand that the time that they're with you is very short. Again, but explain to your children, your family members, that the impact that you have on these kids far outweigh literally the sadness. And then Candy did say this, because it is transitional foster care, explain to your kids, you know, we're going to have, you know, one child can leave and you can take a rest or keep your beds open, and you can get another child right afterwards, and then another child right after. And so, you know, as long as your beds are open, we can fill them. And so, you know, that there can be, you know, kids coming in and to play with your kids as often as you decide.
All right. We have a question by Azulita Celeste. What are the qualifications? So what would be like the main qualifications, whether single, married? What are the qualifications to become a foster home?
We had mentioned that in the beginning, but so you have to be over 21 years old right off the bat. In the state of Illinois, you must be a U.S. citizen, resident, or have your ITIN number. In Indiana, it's just U.S. citizen. We do background checks, medical clearance. You have to give us references. We would call them. Let's see.
You could be single, married, divorced, renting, homeowner.
Yes.
But the qualifications essentially is for you to be a part of the training experience, right? So if you have ample space in your home, right, where you can comfortably accommodate the needs of this child, right? and you are over the age of 21, you earn enough income, because to Lynette's point, although you do receive a per diem, we still need you to earn enough money to handle your own expenses. And for you to obviously be good with also being a part of the training process, cooperate with the licensing process, which does require paperwork and a home study, and following the training, the home study, you are then essentially licensed. Overall, what we have seen is that from the moment you attend one of Nelly's orientations, which again are done virtually via Zoom, from the day you start that to the point of when you're actually licensed, that can take anywhere between 3 to 4 months realistically. It all varies also depending on how quickly you move with your paperwork. The faster and more driven you are, the easier it becomes to help license your home. The moment you're licensed, you'll get a child. I mean, like this. And so we always encourage you to join when you're ready.
Okay. We have another question.
No, and I would add to what Candy said, we just want to make sure that you're doing this because you're passionate about it. The other thing we didn't say is that a background check occurs. So, if you have a criminal record, I think that's ruled out, right, Candy, to be a foster parent.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on obviously the state guidelines and how long ago the crime actually took place. There are standard disqualifiers, and then there are standard ones that can, depending again on the statute of limitations, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, background checks are also a part of the process as well.
Okay, so we have this question: what is the age limit in Illinois to leave the children in home alone that are foster children?
In this program, you can't leave them alone.
You can't leave them alone.
So, in this program, I mean, you do have childcare per se Monday through Friday because they do go to the centers, but because of the trauma they've endured and they can be flight risks. They need to be home. There are respite homes. So let's just say that there's a situation where, you notify, there's a community of foster parents that support one another. But if the children are going to be left with someone else, they need to be licensed.
Okay. And here's another question. Can I foster children from Chicago if I live in Indiana?
No, you have to foster kids in the state that you live in.
So you can foster them in Indiana.
Yeah. So if you live in Chicago, I'm sorry, if the children are from Chicago, you had to answer her question. I would have to foster kids in the state that you live in. So then if you live in Indiana, you would have to go to our East Chicago, Indiana program. If you live in Chicago, you would have to go to our.
So maybe the question could be too, is maybe I live like on the border of Indiana, right, and I work in Chicago. Can I take that child to the educational center that's in the Chicago side of it?
No. And I get that question all the time because we are on the border. And so no, unfortunately, no. If you live in Indiana, then you must be a part of our program in Indiana. If you live in Chicago, you must be a part of the program because of the licensing requirements in every state. Mm-hmm. So if you live in Indiana, you would have to get licensed to become a foster parent in the state of Indiana and follow those guidelines, because we do follow the guidelines for each respective state.
Okay. She says, okay, she's crying.
Sorry. Yeah.
But it's possible.
But the kids come to Indiana. That's the whole thing. This is not just a Chicago program. So we do have two offices. We have one in East Chicago and one in Valparaiso. So, just because we're talking about Chicago doesn't mean you can't be a La Jornada foster parent, because the minors also do go to Indiana.
So there's two sites in Indiana they can go to for the educational services. One is in East Chicago, and the second is Valparaiso.
Yes.
Yeah. I think what happens is, Lynette, is that because we're so close on the border, a lot of our families live in Indiana, but they they work in Chicago, so it's easier to get them to the Chicago center,
Okay.
just because of the location of where they work. And so I think I'm assuming that's why Azulita's asking it.
But Azulita, if you have kids in Chicago and the kids are with you and you're licensed in Indiana, you can visit your kids in Chicago with the minors. It's not like you have to stay in the state of Indiana when you do have a child. You can go, I mean, and you have to work with the local office to let them know, but it's not like you can't go visit your kids in Chicago because you have minors placed in your home or unaccompanied children placed in your home. And that's a conversation that could happen offline with Nelly, to sort of better understand how it works. Because I know it's a lot of information right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of info. I got one last question. I mean, I got a million other ones, but I know our time is precious here. And this is for any of the three, because I know Candy made mention to this, but I want to make sure that is clear, the answer. So if I'm a faith-based person and I go to church, is it okay for me to take my foster child to church with me?
What a terrific question. Virtual hug. Yes, of course. Now, we always say it is our duty as foster parents to help honor what it is that the child's personal, religious, and spiritual practice is. Literally, it's part of the requirements to honor their. So let's say, for instance, they are Pentecostal and you are from a non-denominational Christian church. If the child chooses to go to their Pentecostal church, it is your duty as a foster parent to bring the child there. If the child is like, let's go wherever, we encourage that. Part of the large part of your role as a foster parent, again, is to enrich this child on every layer, from spiritual development, emotional, social, emotional, intellectual development, getting them to literally leave your home a better, bigger kid. So yes, we encourage church participation if it aligns with the child's interest and personal practice.
Awesome. So it's okay to bring them to church, and hopefully they get to enjoy a great experience with the family, and with you at the church, and those at the church can love on them and help them. And are they kind of going there? How private does the foster parent have to be with this child when, like, other parents, you're like, where did he come from, or she?
Love that.
How
love that
work?
question on so many levels. Maintaining the child's confidentiality is also part of your licensing agreement. The bochinche, what brought this child into care, is no one else's business. That is the child's privacy. That's the child's right to his or her own story. So we always encourage foster parents to maintain that level of professionalism, quite frankly, confidentiality, and discretion. Keeping that child's story between you and the child is important. You would want it for you if the roles were reversed, and we encourage foster families to apply that.
Yeah, and to add to that, I know that we also like to tell our foster families, just for the protection and the respect of the children, to not put them on social media. Yes. I mean, that's another thing that we ask, is that, you're not, putting these kids. And again, it's because we want to protect them. We want to respect their privacy. And, that's for their families to do once they leave your home. And so that's just another thing that we ask our families to do with the kids.
Awesome, ladies. You guys did a tremendous job. I know there's so much depth into this and so many other things that can be explained, but in the informational meetings, a lot of that can be asked as well. We just kind of wanted to give our audience here introduction to what this is, and hopefully we can do this again, and other people can hear this. If you're watching this now on live or replay, just share it so other people can hear this message. And I know we talked about it real quick, and before we end this, some employment opportunities or something like that. I heard somebody say that, and I know people are always looking for something. I don't know if I heard that right or if I just need money.
So employment opportunities are also made available, whether you are a social worker or someone interested in helping as a case aide in education department. We have a vast amount of employment opportunities at NYAP. We would encourage you to go onto our website at NYAP.org, NYAP.org, and you can go /careers, and you'll find a wide range of all kinds of terrific, life-changing, life-altering career opportunities throughout the country. So yes, we're hiring.
Yes, and you could go, we have professional opportunities and paraprofessional opportunities. So what that means is there are openings where you need a degree and a certification, and then there are openings where you could have a high school diploma and serve. I'll add this too. I think I did the numbers in the month of April. Our team had taken 700 flights throughout the country. We have reunified kids even in Hawaii. And places as exotic as Hawaii and as remote and rural as South Dakota. So, I would say that Latinos are everywhere. And I'll add something else. We've not only had Latino children, so we have had a child from Ghana. We've had children from France. We've had children from Romania. We are expecting a couple of kids from Ukraine. We have some beds on hold due to the crisis there. We've got kids from Haiti. There's a need for homes for Afghani kids and the long-term foster care in Gurnee and in Naperville. So it's not just Latinos. It's the majority are. I would say about 90% of the kids that we serve are Latinos. And here's the other thing as well. There's a misconception that they all speak Spanish. So a lot of them speak indigenous languages like Quiche. And we support our foster parents. We have pocket translators. And it's, if there's one thing about kids is they're resilient, especially these kids who have traveled so many miles, but they also catch on to the language and they're eager to learn and assimilate. So part of what we ask foster parents is to acculturate them. And, it's funny to see them eating burgers or eating pizza, and you get, and it's just McDonald's. I mean, they've heard of it and they've never experienced it. So yes, that is part of the foster parent experience as well.
Now, one quick last question, and then we'll for sure end it. Is seniors who have no children, is there an age limit on the foster parents? Or like, I'm an empty nester, I'm kind of feeling alone, and I would love to have some foster children come in. Are they able to apply as well?
Oh, yes. We welcome them. Are you kidding me? Yes. As long as they can pass that medical clearance, during the licensing process, they're going to get a letter a medical form that they take to their doctor, and the physician will fill it out. And if they're healthy and, a sound mind and sound body, absolutely, we welcome them.
And by healthy, it's, if you have diabetes, it doesn't disqualify you. But
No,
you have
no,
to
no.
be able to be mobile and just, you're dealing with kids. So you have to be able to be okay for that.
I have a family that fosters that the mom had lung cancer. And so we were concerned. Candy, you met her.
Oh, yeah.
We were concerned about, what her doctor would say. And thankfully, she was healthy. She was strong. She was getting her treatments. And so her doctor cleared her, and she's been amazing in the program.
Yeah.
Awesome. So there's no requirement that you have to have children in the home in order to have the foster children come into your home.
Correct. No.
Cool. Well, if any last statements, any of you three beautiful young ladies would like to say before
Call us. We are ready for you. It is time. This is your year. Let's make it happen. Leave that lasting change. Leave that lasting change in a child's life and do it for yourself and for him or her.
For sure.
Awesome. So thank you guys for joining in. And don't forget to share this broadcast. You never know who would like to be a foster parent. Maybe it's not your thing, but maybe it's someone on your friend's thing that they're looking to do this. So just because maybe you're not interested in it, someone else might be. So you don't know who you can touch with this broadcast by just sharing it on your page. So if you could do that, that would be a great blessing to NYAP and La Jornada. Thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for all that you guys are doing for the children in our nation and in our countries, Latin America, Mexico, all over this world that are suffering, and at least we're doing a small part to help them out. So pastors, churches, if you want to get involved in this, just rewind this a little bit. You'll see how you can get a hold of Nelly, and she will be more than glad to come out there and present, preach, sing, whatever.
Dance.
You need her to do it. Dance,
everything.
she does it all.
Yeah,
So,
and Pastor Robert, we want to thank you because it's very, very kind of you to share your platform and your network with us, and it shows the heart of Dunamis Church and the heart of your heart. To connect with a nonprofit that's not necessarily faith-based, but it's doing work that aligns with our faith. So thank you for that.
Amen. You're welcome. So you guys have a great Thursday. Enjoy it. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see